People who get locked into a vision. All right, that's it, man. That's their drive. That's their passion. Critics don't matter. This don't matter. They're going to do whatever it fucking takes to be the best at what they do.
Yeah, we're live.
Hey guys, we are going live again with our Table Talk podcast. We're going back a little old school here to where I don't have a guest. It's just me going back to how the Table Talk first started, answering your questions. So earlier today, I put a post out on Instagram asking for questions and got a ton of questions in response. I believe we are asking for questions on YouTube as well, and we will be taking questions live on the YouTube feed as we proceed through here. So that's kind of it, guys. This is how it started. Actually, it started, if I want to go back in history even a little bit further, this originally started as something called From the Mill. I don't know if it's on this YouTube channel or if you have to go to our archive channel and look for videos of me answering questions from you guys while I was doing cardio on a treadmill, if you can believe that. But the cardio drove me nuts, so it gave me something to do while getting the cardio done. And then from there it kind of, I stopped doing cardio and found it easier just to sit down and answer the questions. And we started the Table Talk, which has been running for, I don't know how many years. I'm not even going to try to guess. And then how many episodes are we on now with this thing?
This is number 16.
So now we got 16 episodes where we've actually moved it into a podcast as well as a Table Talk. But I never wanted to get too far away from the roots of answering your guys' questions, because that's essentially what this is about. It's what it started from, and I believe it's what it's going to grow from. So yeah, we're still going to have guests. They're going to come in spurts. I don't actively go out and try to recruit people. The guests that I bring in are people that I know for a fact know their shit and know their shit very well, because I know them personally and know that they have something to offer that can help the viewers, listeners, however you're absorbing this content, with their training or education moving forward in the strength field, I guess you would call it. You know, I had paused there for a minute because I'm trying to think of, because it's not so much just the strength athlete, it's strength coaches. You know, the majority of our readers are actually strength coaches, and the minority are actually powerlifters, but my base is powerlifting, so we teach a lot from the base of where I come from, which is the powerlifting. So it's also personal trainers as well. So our audience or our target market really isn't so much the end user, because the end user is typically going to be the client of the people that we're providing the education for, or the end user is going to be that client that just really likes training, loves training, and makes it one of their top 4 priorities in their life, and they want to know everything they can know to become better and to continue to become better. So that's kind of the history of the Table Talk and my rambling while these guys are going through the questions, trying to figure out what to throw out first. For some strange odd reason, I saw a shirt change, which I don't quite understand, but I will say it's hot as hell out here because we do this in the gym, and while we got heating, we don't have air conditioning. So this is going to suck as we move forward throughout the summer months, but it is what it is. All right, guys, so what do you have?
All right. First question here from Instagram is, could you give us a run through on how you learned to visualize your lifts and anything as far as that process?
Yeah, I think we did a Table Talk on this, so I'm going to try to condense it a little bit because you can go search this. I think the title of the video was something along the lines of float tanks, but I was part of a experiment, I guess you would say, a study. I was part of a study when I was a senior in high school, which extended to that summer period afterwards, where we were using deprivation tanks, which essentially were just float tanks back then, and nowhere near as nice as what they are now, or as big as what they are now. But part of it was to see how it would enhance sport performance and how it would enhance visualization and so forth. So before I could go through and be a part of that, they spent a lot of time teaching me how to visualize. So there's a lot of different ways on how to visualize. JM, when he was out here, spoke on a few. He spoke on, meditation actually being a base for the visualization. Actually, for me, I never had that as a base for visualization. So I have some funny stories I can tell about me trying to learn how to meditate since JM's been here. And it's been a disaster. So I got to keep working at it until I master that skill, if it even is a skill that can be mastered. But with visualization, to step back into what the question is, what finally resonated and helped me really tie this all in is, I believe it was a book written by Dr. Judd Soto. I may be pronouncing the last name wrong. I think in 2001, a Sports Odyssey. It was advertised in Powerlifting USA in the 80s. And I think, I'm not 100% sure, it could also have come from Defying Gravity, which was a Bill Starr book. So I get a lot of those older ones mixed up. I don't go back through them very often. I should, but I don't. But the use of a candle to get into a relaxed state is what really helped me. Is I would just focus on the candle, focus on the flame while sitting relaxed at a desk. So there was a back to the chair, so it wasn't a stool and it wasn't sitting on the edge of the bed. It was sitting at a desk with my arms relaxed on the desk. And just visualizing and focusing on the flame until all I could see was the flame. And you try to not see anything beyond that, anything that comes in, you just kind of let it go right back out. So if a thought came in, kind of the same thing as what JM was saying, is, as a thought came in, I would just let it go. You become more proficient at just being able to let it go. So the first part of the whole process was to be able to just get into the flame and stare at the flame for 5 minutes without really, not that many distractions. There's always distractions. And then from there, getting into a point to where you can visualize the max lift that you wanted to achieve. And that's usually the best place to start that I've found. Is it's going to create the most anxiety for somebody trying to visualize. So I like to start with things hard instead of easy, which is just my way of doing things. The easier way, which I'll get into that, is, daydreaming and so forth, but I have a history with that. So by doing that, I only had to focus on one lift or 3 lifts, whatever the goals were for the meet coming up. And then once I was able to actually see those with some perception, so it might have been like very, very blurry, black and white, grayscale imagery of me seeing myself do it. So not actually being in the moment, but me seeing myself do that. Over time, it became more clear. It became more vivid. It became more, colorful. It became feeling the bar, more senses I started to pull in, what it looked like, what it smelled like, what it felt like, the taste in the air, anything that I could associate with a gym or a meet I associated with that. Once I got to that point, because keep in mind now I'm only focusing on a few different things. It's not like I'm focusing on everything I have to do for a day. After that, then when I got deep into the study, it was to visualize every training session before the training session at least once. And it's, in all honesty, I don't think I ever did it more than once, because to actually visualize a whole training session, it takes a lot of time. You know, it takes pretty much the same amount of time as it takes to do the training session, because if you're visualizing putting, you know, I wore cowboy boots every day of my life all the way up until I graduated from high school. So pulling my cowboy boots off in the gym and putting on, I believe it was work boots is what I squatted in, because I didn't know what weightlifting shoes were, so I wanted a little heel. So it was fake Timberlands or whatever the cheapest shoe store boots that looked like Timberlands that had a heel were. So just visualizing the process of changing the shoes and putting the shorts on and putting the suit on, and all those processes, then the sets and the reps and the warm-ups and how the bar feels on the back, and then the pressure, how it increases on the back. So it's a long time journey, but the key thing is you have to be able to be in a state to be able to see what you want to see, and then to be able to be in a state that you're okay if things go awry. You know, so if you're visualizing and you're halfway through your warm-up sets and all of a sudden, you know, you start visualizing an ambulance going past the front door and a crowd of people falling from the sky or some other stupid shit, you just let them fall, and then you just get back to your next set and you go from there. So that was something that, and the sensory tank or the flotation tank helped tremendously with this, by the way, because it really put me in a state to be able to have huge clarity. And I don't know if it was the floating or, you know, you're locked in a chamber more or less, you know, so you can't hear shit, you know, you can't see shit. It's totally black. So, and it's kind of hard, you know, to get up and leave, you know, so there's that helped a lot. That brought a lot of clarity with that. And then I've always maintained that ability and that skill in the gym to be able to put myself into whatever mental state I needed to be in almost at a moment's notice. I just need a couple minutes for that. I use visual markers to be able to tie the state to a mark. Okay, so if you guys watch my stupid training videos, you'll see that I use chalk and I'll mark FU on my leg, or I'll mark it on my chest. And, you know, obviously it stands for fuck you, but that's me, you know, telling the bar or whatever resistance that's against me, fuck you, I have, you know, I own this. But it's also something that when I first start visualizing, you know, if it's in the gym or wherever it is, and it is something that's going to involve some kind of mental state that I have to take control of and take complete ownership of, I visualize that first. So I visualize that mark first, and then I visualize it at the end. So as soon as I put that mark on me, it's kind of a trigger for my mind to know, okay, here's where we need to go next. And from the visualization standpoint, I can use it to push to a more aggressive state. There's a peak arousal phase, so you can go too far, you know, to where you fuck yourself up. You get too fired up, or you get too zippied up, and then that's what my nickname was at Westside, because I get too fired up, and it just, things become a fucking mess. So there's two states that I'll put myself in. One is calm aggressive, and that would be if if I know I can do confident, it all boils down to confidence. So I want to lay that truth out first, that I don't give a fuck what you need to do. If you have to listen to certain music, if you have to put on certain headphones, if you have to have a certain ritual or a certain routine, whatever you have to do to put yourself in a confident state, that's the end result here from the training standpoint, is the confidence. I don't care how the hell you got to get there. Just find your way to get there. So for me, if I'm confident that I can do the weight, but it might get a little funky, like this last Saturday, I believe, I tried something new, which was kind of stupid. I didn't know how it was going to plan out, but it was to use 20 chains on each side and then work the weight up as after the chains were already loaded. And I realized real quick, this is not going to be the smartest thing, because the chains dictate the movement until you get over a certain amount of straight weight on the bar, to where that can kind of counter the chains. Well, with 20 chains per side, I'm not strong enough to get that amount of straight weight on the bar to where the chains are not going to determine where the movement's going to go. So regardless of the setup and how clean we were going to keep the setup on the last set, or my max effort set, when I visualized that one, I wasn't visualizing flames and aggressiveness and bars on fire and, a lot of different things that I'll visualize for an aggressive state. I was visualizing a calm, aggressive state, to where I would still be in that same place mentally, but have the ability to have extreme focus and to think, because I knew as soon as I stood up, I was going to have to compensate the entire eccentric while going down, because the chains are kind of spinning and, kind of going wherever they want to go. And then make the decision when I was on the box to sit there longer than normal, just to let everything settle and stop. And I actually had to sit back further than normal before I could come back up. Had I tried to do that max effort exercise with fury aggression, I would have missed the weight. So another part of this is knowing what the obstacle is that you have to overcome, to know what the proper mental state you need to try to put yourself in for that. To fall back on something that JM spoke about, I think everybody should go back and listen to that podcast with JM Blakely, because he touched on this, and love to get him back out, touch on it a little bit more. He's already submitted one article, and he's working on the second one. So we're going to have a lot of content from him shortly in regards to this, and also in regards to training, because we really didn't get a chance to get into the training all that much. Is the best way to learn, and it never really dawned on me until he said this, was daydream. So if you don't know how to visualize, just daydream more. Just take time out of your day, remove yourself from your normal state. So if you're at your desk, go sit at a different desk. If you normally sit on a certain chair, go sit in a different chair. Remove yourself from your state, find a different state, and then just daydream. Just think about different shit. And I realized when he said that pretty much that was my whole childhood, was, being alone, spending time alone, making time to be alone, because I didn't want to be around other people, and just sitting, and staring at the clouds. And, I don't want to say pondering life, because I'm in elementary school. So what the hell are you actually pondering? You're just sitting there daydreaming about different shit, but you're learning how to self-talk. You're learning how to, control your thoughts. You're learning how to refocus. You're learning how to pivot your brain, how to control it. You're learning, if you're learning, you have the ability to change the narrative, on what you're thinking about, and you're able to get out of the rut of whatever thought that you're in to be able to get into another one. So I think that is a great place to start. I can't disagree with JM in any way whatsoever. for most people, that's probably the best way to start the whole process, because if they can't relax the brain, there's no way, or their mind, there's no way they're going to be able to visualize, even though you still do. All right. And you gotta think about that a little bit. When you're driving to the gym, you will, if you're serious about what you're doing, you are daydreaming, you are visualizing what you're going to do in the gym. You're just not doing it in a state where you're actually trying to picture it, nor should you when you're trying to drive to the gym. And so that's where I would say I'd start on that. It's a long, lengthy answer, but I'm sure there's very simple ways to be able to say it, but I think it needs to be elaborated on, because the one other thing that JM said to me that really stuck is that, and because he went on a hiatus basically for 20 years, 15, 20 years, and still was training people. I mean, he didn't disappear. He just is not part of the whole online thing. And trust me, we're we and many others, or a few others, are just trying to teach him how to use the internet. So just think about that for a minute. So while we're trying to teach him how to use the internet, he's been away a lot from what's going on, in the industry, and was really fascinated that, because training doesn't change that much. Anybody that says otherwise is pretty much full of shit. It just becomes renamed, re-engineered, repurposed. Nothing's really new. And in the past 20 years, we're still, nobody's talking about the mental aspects of sport participation or the mental aspects of strength. And it's been 20 years, but yet every coach will tell you that it makes up a majority of the athlete's potential. So it's now how it makes up that majority can be debated, where that's why I like the word confidence, because, you take somebody that has confidence and then has the physical attributes, and the ability to play the game, or the ability to lift, they're going to be a hard person to beat. They're going to be a tough person to beat. But the problem happens is, in power sports or strength sports, you're going to get hurt. It comes with the territory. Every time you get a ding, your confidence takes a dent. So you can have somebody who's supremely confident, 5 years ago, and then 5 years of dings, dents, and a couple pulls here and there, they don't have any confidence anymore, and they're not worth a shit. So they actually end up getting their ass smoked by the person who wasn't confident coming into the sport, but has built it and has built that mental strength and mental fortitude to be able to overcome adversity and to move forward no matter what. And they're the ones that usually end up kicking ass in the end. What do we got next?
All right. What were your most beneficial pursuits outside of powerlifting? So maybe not necessarily what was the most successful pursuit, but what was the most beneficial to you?
My wife. I mean, I don't know what you mean by beneficial. It's beneficial sounds like self-serving, where anything that you're going to pursue in life, while we are all individuals, anything that's really self-serving is going to be an injustice to your being and your life. I think, it has to be something that's, of mutual benefit, that's going to complement instead of just build, So, for example, you can have yes people around you all the time, form a whole group of yes people all the time. And you'll never get better. You'll never be challenged, but you're going to feel great, man. You're going to feel right all the time. Years later, those people disappear and you have no self-validation. You have nothing, so you have to have people around you that are going to challenge you, that are going to make you accountable, hold you accountable, make you responsible, and make you want to be responsible and accountable. I think that's probably a better way to state that, is you should want to be accountable. You should want to be responsible for something, because those are things that you can then take ownership of. And those are things that can build you as an individual, but build, the family as well. So it's kind of a weird framed question, because I don't think I'm answering it the way it was actually intended. So let's just skip on to something else.
All right. Let me see. What's the most important thing you learned early in your training career?
Show up. Consistency matters. Probably more so than anything. When you've been doing this shit for 15, 20 years, I can probably make a debate to tell you that inconsistency is probably going to be more beneficial for the lifter than consistency. But we're talking about outliers here. But in the very beginning, just showing up. If it's something that you want to be great at, if it's something that you want to push the boundaries of and be the best at that you can do, then you have to be there. Even if you can't train, you have to be there. If you put it this way, I'm going to bring everything back to powerlifting, because it's very, very simple to use an example to explain pretty much everything. Because the goal is to increase the squat, bench, and deadlift over a period of time. It's a very simple goal, to become better at those things. So that can relate to pretty much everything except, personal relationships. So with that standpoint, if you're too sore, or you're too banged up, or you have rhabdo, or you broke your arm, or whatever it is, you still show up, because you're going to learn from watching the other people train, assuming that you're with a training group. If you're not with a training group and you train alone and you just show up in the gym and you're just hanging out, watching people, kind of spotting, helping people who are new, to the gym, the more people that you help, the more that you're reinforcing what you know. So you're learning more. The more you're around it, the more you pick up things that you normally wouldn't pick up. So when you can't train on the days that you're injured or hurt or deloading or whatever it is, on those days that you can't really train like everybody else in your training group or everybody else in the gym, those are the days you're actually going to be more perceptive on what people do. So when you're paying attention to, how does this more advanced lifter, how do they approach the bar compared to how you approach the bar? How do they walk it out compared to how you walk it out? How do they enter the gym compared to how you enter the gym? What do they do when they get in the gym? What do you do? So you'll start to see similarities, and common factors amongst the people that are stronger than you'll see amongst those that are just beginning. But if you don't show up, then you miss that learning opportunity. The other thing is, if you're a beginner or an intermediate and you're not there, then you're just reinforcing to the people who are looking at you, trying to decide, hey, look, should we help this guy out? Should we bring him in our group? Should we do this? Should we do that? All you're doing is reinforcing to them that, maybe we shouldn't do that, because there's a time investment involved with, helping people, assuming there's not a transaction involved, that people are helping people the way it's kind of been through the last 50, 60 years when it comes to strength sports. They're going to help people who actually give a fuck. They're not going to put a lot of time into people who don't care, because it's a disservice to the people who do care. So if you're acting like a person that doesn't care, then that's exactly how you're going to be treated in return. If you're acting like a person that does, then that's how you're going to be treated there. So show up.
All right, this was an interesting one. Put some thought into it. Not that you don't for your other ones, but if you could assemble a powerlifting crew right now with everyone in their prime, who would they be?
That's interesting, because there's a huge component that's missing here. And I don't know the author, but I think it was a sales book or a business book written years ago called Rainmaker, or The Rainmaker. And it's basically talking about those people that come into businesses and they just kill it. I mean, they're the sales guys that are selling, 10 times more than all the other sales guys. I mean, they're the people that grow companies. They're the people that, they're rainmakers. They're the people that take companies to a completely different level. And research, and I'm saying this loosely because I can't quote the research and I can't tell you to where even to go from that. So supposedly, research has been done to be able to show that you can take, a rainmaker that, say it's a car dealer in a certain dealership, or a lawyer partner in a certain practice, or the best surgeon in a certain hospital, and so on and so on and so on. You can take them and they can leave and go to another company. And it happens all the time. So they go to another company because benefits are better, or pays better, whatever it's going to be, whatever the reason for it is. And when they're at that other company, they're no longer a rainmaker. You can see this in professional sports. A lot of the time is athletes will be traded. Sometimes the great athlete becomes an average athlete. Sometimes the average athlete becomes a great athlete. So what I'm getting at here, it's the culture that matters. So yes, the rainmaker matters, right? But they can't make rain unless they're in the right culture. If they're not in the right culture that fits them, then they're just going to be average. And that's where, it's this conversation can go a lot of different ways. That's where if, you're the owner or the manager of a company and you see somebody that's, not getting better and they're not increasing their skill set and they're just kind of stagnant, one of the best things that you can do for them is to release them to the market, because there's a good probability that they might end up in a different culture, and then that other culture is more conducive to them, and then they blow up and they become what they can really become. If it's somebody that's working in a culture that they're stifled, they hate it. They got to sit in their car for 5-6 minutes before they can even walk into work. And granted, trust me, I've been there. I've done that. It's part of every job. So I'm by no means am I saying you have a couple weeks that are like that, or days and you're like, fuck this job, I'm going to leave. It's part of every job. You're going to go through phases like that. I'm talking where it's like that all the time. And there's no like, man, this is cool, I want to work on this project, or, there's none of that. Leave, and find someplace else, because culture matters. Culture, without the right culture, there is no rainmaker. So Now, what you're asking me is if I could assemble a team of powerlifters to get them to train together, you know, what would be the most awesome team to be able to put together? I can't answer that question because I can sit there and say, man, how awesome would it be to be able to have like a Vogelpohl, Cohn, and Goggins, to put those guys, 3 guys all in the same gym. We're talking 3 entirely different cultures that these guys trained in. Entirely different. You know, Steve had a lot of his training basically in the military, not military type training, but you know, the most of the beginning of his powerlifting career was, you know, being associated with military rec. And, you know, Chuck at Westside Barbell and Ed had 1 or 2 really, really good training partners in a stretch. But for the most part was controlling his own flow, you know, from that hall went. So it would be a disaster, you know, so they wouldn't help each other. They would have all been worse. So it's a tough one, you know, and it's easy for me to answer because I trained at Westside for 14 years, which is a culture that was designed to be able to help propel, you know, lifters to top levels. But I can tell you with 100% certainty, there were far more lifters that came and left within a week than stayed and actually became better than they could have ever been on their own. And that's not a dig at Westside in any way whatsoever. It's just it was a certain culture, it was a certain environment that some people would thrive in, most would not. Now, the some people that would thrive in it actually, I think, were pulled up to a higher level than what they could have had they been on their own. You know, so I don't think there's a right answer to that. I do think that there's some lifters that trained alone, but they still need spotters and shit like that. There's some lifters I think that trained alone that might have been a little bit better if they had a couple more people training with them that were pushing them just a tad. Not too much, because you got to keep in mind where I'm coming from here, guys. You know, it's the majority of my time in the sport was around people that were ranked in the top 20 and above. So it's really easy for somebody to come in and say somebody comes in and pushes that top guy, but it ends up pushing them over the ledge. Now they're hurt, they're fucked up, and they're not worth a shit. So sometimes it's better for them to not have that person and then just to rely on their own personal instinct that got them where they are at, you know, from that standpoint. But let's chop this answer down, make this simple. For every beginner and almost every intermediate lifter, if you're training alone, you will do better if you were to hook up and train with a couple other people who have the same desire and passion for the sport as what you do. I know it's hard. You know, I went through years of trying to find different groups of people, you know, to train from, and you got to kind of scout them out. You got to kind of vet it, and then you got to be accepted to that group, you know. So, and today it's probably much harder than it was when I was doing that. But I think that you're doing your lifting a disservice if you're not around people who know the sport, that know the technique, you know, and know the game a little bit, know the training a little bit, know signs, you know, signs of overreaching, signs of maybe not training hard enough, and especially the technique. The technique's a big part. You know, little changes to that technique can make a big difference, and they're hard to make when you're training alone in your basement and you're sending one video clip of 2 reps to somebody you really don't even know that well once a week to be able to tell you what to do for the next week. So that's my answer there.
Okay. This is from the live stream here. It said, biggest tip to someone who wants to be the next Dave Tate.
Don't. Don't, man. Just, why would you want to do that? You know, I was taught at a really young age, so young I can't even remember, that to never have idols. You know, it was drilled into my head from basically everybody around me. You know, even if it was a sports idol, or do not fucking look up to anybody. You can look up to certain people for certain traits that they represent, but don't have idols. You know, so don't be me. Don't try to be like me. Be you. You know, be the best you that you can possibly be. So if you don't know what that is, then take time and try to figure out who the fuck you are. You know, which it's not an easy process. It takes some mindfulness, you know, and self-awareness to try to figure out who you really are. And then once you think you know who you really are, you're probably fucking wrong. Because when you start asking people, you'll find out that's not exactly who you thought you were in the first place. So figure that out, and then figure out where you want to become better, and then work those skills. You know, look at how you can become better at those traits and those abilities. And you can certainly, you know, look up to certain individuals for traits that they represent and try to emulate, you know, those traits and go on from there. But by no means, you know, just don't have idols, man. It's just, you know, I just leave it at that. You know, it was written in a book a really long time ago to not have idols. So let's just leave it at that.
All right. Hey, Dave, could you talk about your move from employee to entrepreneur? Any tips on starting a business?
I hate to be that person to say that. Well, in a way, I've always been an entrepreneur, you know, because that's such bullshit. You know, I used to sell lemonade at a lemonade stand. All this dumbass stuff. But my parents did own their own business, so I did grow up around a dinner table with business being discussed. Not all the time. You know, they kept most of it in the store. But just like anybody who owns a business with their significant other, you know, conversations are going to carry over to the home, and then they are overheard by small ears, you know, and you pick up on things. And so some of the things I picked up on at a really young age is it's not worth selling unless it's the highest quality you can sell. The customer service will be easier. The warranties will be easier. You know, the complaints will be less, you know, because you're selling the best. You know, if you're going to sell shit, then you better get used to handling a lot of issues. You know, I also grew up around, you know, the philosophy that, you know, and people will disagree and say it's not true, but that the customer is always right. And I do get it, man. I've been in business for 21 years, so I get, yeah, I get it. A lot of times the customer's not right, but you don't need to tell them that. You know, I think maybe twice out of 21 years if I had to have a critical conversation with a customer that was just flat out trying to rip us off. It's rare, you know, and I'm sure it happens, you know, all the time, but you can't put all your focus on that. It's got to focus is going to be on the people that are supporting you for the right reasons and doing a hell of a job doing it. So moving forward, you know, I worked as a bouncer, so that's kind of most of the jobs that I did. I worked not every day, but I've had a job since I was basically 12, working for my parents. And then every job I had after that, with the exception of a couple, were kind of independent contractor related. You know, every bouncing position I had was essentially an independent contractor trying to figure out how to earn more tips, through, many different means that you would have as a bouncer trying to earn tips and pay your way through college, is a gym manager. Most of the revenue was based upon commission. So it was sales there, and then the management skills of being the gym manager. So I've always kind of been around that environment. And when I came to Columbus and started working as a personal trainer in a corporate training center, things were a lot more formalized and more systemized, which I hadn't seen before, not to this scale. And I saw the value in that, and I saw how that could really make a difference. So that did leave an imprint on me as far as the pros and cons on how that worked. But after 6 years of commission and salary, it was kind of a mix of both with that. I decided to go as a straight independent contractor with them so I could work on Elite FTS, and didn't feel it was right to do that between clients while I was in their building and their offices and so forth. And so that I never had that entrepreneurship bug or fear, or it just seemed like the thing to do, and I really wasn't fucking good at much else. So it's, most of my life it's always kind of been like, well, what am I going to do? Even now, like if the business tanks, it's, if JL's still in business, I got a deal worked out with him, that we'll hire each other if anything ever goes bad. But shit, if something goes bad with me, I'm fucked. I'm going to be working for a temporary service, and trust me, I got no problem working for McDonald's or Subway if I have to do that to pay the bills. No problem whatsoever. Been there before, do it again. No issues with that. So that's always been there from that standpoint. Now, and I've been poor most of my adult life. I grew up middle class, but as soon as I left the house, it became rough class for a long time. So money management was fairly easy because was always being rolled back into, trying to save for a house. And then, from there, so everything has been looked at as an investment. So I would rather invest in the company than pay myself more. And fortunately, my wife, who is the co-founder, thinks the same way. So what was the second part of the question? Like what advice?
I think there was only one part.
There was, how did I get into it? But then I thought there was a follow-up.
Let me see. Hold on. Yeah. No, I think it was just one part.
What was the question again?
Hold on here.
Sometimes I go off on tangents.
Just talk about when you went from employee to entrepreneur, and then any tips on starting a business.
Okay. All right. The what I really wanted to answer, but I wanted to give some kind of context behind that, is there came a day to where I had to make the decision of walking away from the personal training job that I had, which I was also managing the personal training program. So there was salary associated with it. There was commission associated with it. There were bonus associated with it. There was a lot associated with it. So I was doing well. I was doing actually very well. And some years, more well than I still do now. So, there was there was a decision that had to be made to where it was, okay, I have to make this step or this is never going to happen. And that was a hard decision. And it was one that I probably waited 2 years too long to do. And I see it common with a lot of the people that I help, that I mentor, that are kind of going through the same process, is I know as soon as they start asking, it's always going to take about 2 years longer than what I would want them to do it, and 2 years longer than what they think they're going to really think that it should be done, or they will all go back and say, man, I should have did it 2 years sooner. But it helps me when I'm mentoring them from that standpoint of knowing that it's going to take longer. But the advice that I would have in situations like that, and I did not follow this advice, by the way, is because I went from income to no income, and that's a big difference. Now, my wife still was working and had her job, but it wasn't the greatest paying job, but we could pay the bills. So we weren't putting ourselves into financial irresponsibility. We are just putting ourselves into ramen noodles again. But the advice that I would give is, a lot of people who are working in their full-time job and then they want to start their own thing, on the side. In today's world, they're going to be doing both at the same time, at least for a while, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's a lot of hours, right? But it's a good thing, because once it does become your own thing, a lot of hours are going to become really your minimum hours. So while you think it's going to be less, it's not. It's going to be more. So you might have your 40-hour job, and then you're putting in 20 or 30 hours on your own, consulting type gig. And then you think, well, if I can ever get out of that 40-hour job, then I'll only be working 50 hours. Well, that's bullshit. You're going to be working 80. Ask anybody that's been through it. They're going to tell you exactly the same thing. It's kind of how it works. Mistakes that I see is you're earning income on that side job, that side hustle, or whatever you want to call it, right? It's usually something that you really love to do, a passion of yours that you really like, and you're earning income from that, and it's extra income. Bank that income. Don't let that income become part of your cost of living. Don't let it become part of your lifestyle. Just bank it and forget about it. All right, because you want that income to come as close as you can to what your current income is. Actually, you want it a little bit higher, because your current income, if you have an employer, is not actually what you think it is, because the employer's got to pay the Social Security, and there's other payroll expenses that go into it, that as soon as you start paying yourself, you're going to shit. So my advice is just to be safe. Make sure it's 20% higher than what you think it's going to have to be, and then you should be cool. And that will give you a buffer for, taxes at the end of the year if you fuck that up as well. But what people make the mistake of doing is they start stacking the income. So they're putting all the bank in the same account, and then all of a sudden, hey, this car, I can afford this now. And so their lifestyle changes based upon the revenue from 2 jobs instead of the 1. And now they put themselves into a financial position that they can't quit the first one and just do the second one. So that's the first biggest mistake I see. The second part of that, which kind of plays along with this, is that second income is usually something that they really, really love to do. And as soon as that becomes a business, is the day that they're no longer going to be doing that as their main responsibility. Because that's that's being a technician. When you start to run a business, you have to run the business, not be the technician. All right. So let's say it's a personal trainer, you're doing that on the side, and you get to a point to where the incomes are about even. It's a little bit higher than what your other job is. Cool, I'm going to quit the other job. I'm just going to do this personal training gig. I love this. Then when you start doing the personal training gig, you realize, fuck, I don't know what I'm doing. How do I get more clients? How do I do this? How do I do that? There's a whole business aspect here that you now have to figure out. And if you want that to grow, you have to become more of a business person than you are the trainer. So you got to keep that in mind as well. So sometimes the answer is keeping it as that second gig and just loving the fuck out of what you do with it, and be more selective on who your clients are and what the work is that you do. So if I'm trying to think of another example to be able to drive this home. I'll use Josh an example. He's sitting right here. He does some contract video work, right? So he's making, extra money, extra salary, doing something that he loves to do. And I don't know what his future aspirations are. Maybe he wants to start his own video company. I don't know. That's great. If that's what he wants to do, then someday that's what he's going to do. But if not, if he's just doing this because he loves that type of work, which I know he does because he does it here, then instead of starting his own business per se, and we've never had a conversation about this, by the way, which would be interesting because maybe next week he'll ask me about it. But if he ever wants to start something like that, then it's a matter of, okay, what I would tell him is, okay, let's figure out why you want to do this. Because if it's to make more money, well then, there's definitely obviously that possibility. There's also a possibility to make less and go out of business. There's the other possibility of keep growing the shit out of the side hustle to where your referrals get to a point that you don't have to do these jobs anymore that you don't want to do. All right. Say it's, weddings or birthdays or whatever the hell it is, and it's like every time one of them comes up, he's like, oh shit, I don't want to do this, but I got to do it because you build that up to where all the referrals come in and his work that he really, really fucking likes to do. Then when he gets to that point, he can charge more for that work because he's going to become better skilled at doing the work specific to that part of the industry. So he'll be able to charge 2 to 3 times more for that because the quality is going to be better, and he won't have to do the other things, the work he doesn't enjoy as much, to be able to make money. So that's a possibility that I think a lot of people don't look at when they start thinking about being an entrepreneur and starting their own business, doing something that they really love. Because you can do something you really love as a side business and build it up to the point to where you don't have to have any clients or any customers that you really don't want. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of time, and it's going to take a hell of a lot of work to get to that point. But that might actually be the answer more so than jumping over to being your sole entrepreneur and business owner, because that's the day that you actually become a business owner and not a technician.
That makes sense. Back to powerlifting here. What would powerlifting survive with no federations?
Fuck, I think it already does now. Yeah. Here's the thing. As long as there's a platform, a squat rack, a bench press, and a bar that somebody can pull, there's always going to be a group of people who are going to want to see who can lift the most shit. So federations really don't matter. And that's a point that I try to stress, because I've seen it change so much since, I think my first meet was 83. So I've seen a lot of changes go on with the number of federations, and I could be wrong. I know I get some of my timelines wrong with this, but keep in mind I was really young when I came into the sport, so I really didn't know the political side or any of that crap. But I do believe there was only the USPF at the time, maybe the APF, but I think that came a little bit after I came into the sport. But there was a split. There might have been the AAU as well. So there, say 3. There wasn't 100 or whatever the insane number it got to. So there's at one point when you were talking about the dominant federations, the ones that actually mattered, like if you went to a nationals and you won it, it actually mattered. At one point it was I believe it was the ADFPA, but it was the drug-free version. I think it went on to be called what it is now, the USAPL, but it might have been called something different in between. I'm not 100% certain, but kind of the same thing. And then the APF, which wasn't drug tested, and that was about it. I mean, the USPF kind of stayed around, but it was so small it really didn't matter. So you had these 2 dominant worlds. You had the IPF and then the WPC, and those are like the 2 big things. So the nationals mattered, and the worlds really mattered, in both. It mattered, and there was respect across the board. And then it started to fan out a little bit, and how it fanned, and what came up. There was NASA, there was IPA, then others that followed from there. But somewhere around 2010, I think it was, if you were to check Powerlifting Watch, it was more than I thought, man. It was like 310 federations. I mean, it was fucking stupid. And only a few have been dominant. Now the dominant federations are the USAPL, the USPA, and then, the RPS maybe. There's a big drop off after those 2. And there's a couple others that kind of fill in that gap. And who knows what the future is going to hold from that standpoint goes. But what I tell people to look at is, if they get in the sport, they're getting in the sport because they love what happens on the platform. They don't need to know what happens behind the curtain. They don't need to know what happens behind the platform. They don't need to know all the bullshit that goes on in every federation. So no federation can point fingers at another. They just can't, because no federation's perfect. No federation is ever going to be perfect. So I got to look at this from the lifter perspective, because I have no vested interest in any federation whatsoever. And the money meets are another thing that's kind of disrupting things a little bit. And I don't know if it's a good or bad thing. It's up to the lifters to decide. Money in the sport is good, but, nationals really don't mean a whole hell of a lot in any federation anymore. Maybe the USAPL can be debated. But any other ones, I don't think it really means a goddamn thing. It's what matters is, here's my thing with the sport. Find meet directors who are great meet directors and support them, because the meet directors are always going to put on the best meets that they can, the good ones. And they may move from one federation to another one because they just get sick of the bullshit they have to deal with. And the bullshit changes, so find really good meet directors and then support the hell out of them and let them build awesome meets. Because when you support them, then they'll start running more than 1 or 2 meets a year, and so that helps build the sport, the perception of the sport, and it helps build, it lessens the bullshit that happens at a lot of meets of the sport, because more meets are going to happen because the good meet directors are being supported. And talk about the good meet directors. If you do a meet and the meet was a good meet, talk about how good the meet was. We all get, that you have followers and you have fans, and, if I follow people, and, I like to follow certain people's training, not everybody's obviously, because there's tons of lifters, but I want to know how you did. I want to know how you did after the meet. I don't want to wait a day. I don't wait 2 days. So, you post that stuff up. I'm never going to be a person that's going to make fun of somebody that's making their post meat report, unless you're apologizing to everybody in the world because you had a bad meet. Then I'm going to make fun of you for that. But post up your results. But man, if the meet director did a good, did a stand-up job, post that shit. Let other people know so they know, hey, this is a good meet to go to. If they did a shitty job, you don't need to post that they did a shitty job. Just let everybody assume they sucked. That's an easy way to go from there. And then as far as your own lifting goes, I think, powerlifting.org is awesome. And I think I've probably promoted them on every freaking podcast I've done so far, but their site keeps getting better and better. And look at your rank. All right. And I understand that you can go there and you can select all the right categories and, make yourself a world record holder if you want. And you can do that. All right. Do that, pat yourself on the head or whatever you need to do. Fill your ego full of pride. But before you're done, go look at how you rank in the open division of your weight class in your respected category of lifting. Look at how you rank. All right. So if it's 150, if it's 300, if it's 75, whatever it is, make a note of that, man. And next year be better than that. Work your way up the rankings. Because me coming through the sport, we had Powerlifting USA. So it was a magazine, and the top 100 would come out once a year. And I got fucked because I was a 308. So I got thrown in with the supers, but that's all right. I wanted to see where I ranked. Did I rank better than last year? Shit, at a certain point, it's like, am I even going to make the list? Am I going to be able to compete? Just due to injuries or whatever you're trying to deal with at the time. But constantly strive to make yourself better. Because I remember when I first got in the top 100, that was cool. It's like, okay, this is cool. I'm in this thing now. What do I need to do to get in the top 75, the top 50? And so on. And now you have this openpowerlifting.org, which allows you to do the same thing. And just do it by the open class. It's going to set your standards higher. Set those standards high, man, and work your way up. See how high you can go. That's the sport, man. See how high you can go on that list and support the shit out of great meet directors. That's all you need to worry about when lifting the weights.
On to a little bit more serious question here. I don't know. I'm not going to say the name of this person, but they said, can I borrow the fleshlight for research purposes?
Well, yeah. You probably can, because I don't think I can't say 100%, right? You can never say 100%
I know where
sure.
this is going.
Because there's people. The gym is kind of a key club, so some people have keys. It is connected to the office, so it is alarmed and so forth too. But there are people that are in here by themselves sometimes, so there is the possibility that somebody could have fucked the flashlight or the fleshlight. I highly doubt it, because it's gross. It's got like chalk and shit all in it, and I've never come in here and opened it up. It's not like we're opening it up every day, by the way, but I've never came in here and opened it up and like, hey, look at this. It looks like it's been cleaned. We've never had that, but there could be some dirty bastard in here too, blowing the thing away. But I think all you're going to find is, a lot of ammonia caught up inside that silicone shit. And but we have managed over a period of time to figure out how to work it a little bit better and how to get more kick out of it. But in all seriousness, well over 90% of the time, it just sits in the chalk bowl over there, and nobody really uses it. Now, if somebody comes in from out of town, yeah, we're gonna make them use it, just because it.
In what way?
The ammonia,
No, yeah.
the ammonia, because it if you do it right, and you see, I didn't know that you have to leave the bottom open a little bit. It's like a vent, right? Where,
Well, you got the butthole version, right?
yeah, there's the butthole version, but see, it was, I don't want to name the lifter that came out here, but I was explaining to him how this whole thing came about, and that I realized that the bottom came off, and I really didn't understand why the hell it came off, but that you could put ammonia capsules in there and close it and then sniff the ammonia, but sometimes it didn't work. Sometimes it worked like really, really well and like knock you on your ass. Other times it wouldn't work, and it was kind of it was depressing because I would have somebody come out and like, dude, you got to try this. This is awesome, and then they do it. It sucks. Then everybody thinks I can't handle my ammonia, and it's like, that's not true. If there's something there's something I'm missing here. And said lifter who was out here said, well, Dave, you need to vent the bottom. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And he says, well, depending upon how far you open the bottom or close the bottom, it makes the silicone tighter or looser. And I'm like, how the fuck do you know this? And obviously I know how he knows this, so
Maybe it just needs to be bleached.
I'm like, okay, I get it now, because it's got little vents in it. So if you open it a little bit, it allows airflow to come up through the bottom, which when you go to smell the ammonia, it's going to pull the ammonia up to your nose, where if that was shut, you don't have that airflow. So you're not going to be able to get the ammonia hit that you really want. But the difference with the thing is, if you hit an ammonia capsule or you hit those salt things, which I'm not really a big fan of, but people use them all the time, you kind of know when it's going to hit, because you snap the caps, your hands are going to your nose, so you know when it's going to hit you. You just might not know how hard. And some of the salts, like that dude that was out here during that strongman thing, that what's the name of that, Cerberus, or I can't pronounce the company. I sell I sell their stuff and still can't pronounce the company's name.
Cerebrus or something.
Yeah, he had, oh my God, he's got a few versions of the salts. That there's one I'm not even gonna. I tried the medium version, and that was fucked up. That was too much. But if I stuck that in the bottom of the fleshlight, it's lights out. But he's got a stronger version, which I will never open. But anyhow, some of that shit's getting vicious. But it gets back to my point. You know when it's going to hit you. When you're sticking your nose in a butthole, that's a fleshlight. All right, that shit's got to travel up the anal canal before it hits your nostrils. You don't know when it's going to hit your nostrils. That's what makes it such a shocker for most people, is because they start huffing on it, or whatever the hell you want to call it, and nothing's happened, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, wham, they get whacked. Which maybe I should get some of those crazy ass salts and put in the bottom of that thing. Fuck somebody up big time. But then again, if I sent it off for research purposes, I wouldn't have it here to fuck with people.
Plus, we wouldn't want that back.
Yeah, the fucked up thing is, it's now part of the identity of the gym. It's like, hey man, this is an awesome gym. This is unfreaking believable. They walk in and the gym is like, man, this is the greatest thing ever. I've always wanted to see this place. Where's the fleshlight? It's like, you know what I'm saying?
It's in a golden glass case.
It's like it's in the chalk bowl. So I guess I got to work out my sponsorship details a little bit better, and
you do.
Get more fleshlights in here.
All right, on a different topic here, what impressed you most about London High School the other day? I'm assuming they mean about the kids, not the facility and the hallways and whatnot.
There's a lot of things. I mean, I'm really happy for Jim, so I got to put that out there. Is Jim helped start this company, so I mean he's the legacy of this company. So I will never, be able to give him enough credit for the help that he provided us in the early days. He was the first employee, and trust me, the corporate, if you want to call this a corporate environment, but the business environment is not his world. His world is it's rubber and grass. It's not an office setting, but he did a hell of a job. for the years that he was with us in an office setting, and all the other shit that we did everything, man. It was Jim, myself, Tracy, and Chris for many, many years. And we did everything. I mean, the packaging shit, everything, but I don't want to get into all that. So a couple years ago when he was first brought on, he was also working as a coach for the running back coach. So I think it was the first game. I went to the first game, and just seeing him on the field working with the kids was a really, really fucking cool thing to see, knowing him for as long as I have, seeing somebody that is in the right environment for them, but also for what I think he's really here to do and to leave his mark with. So he no longer coaches from the football perspective. It's just the strength and conditioning part. So when he was out the other day, he invited me to come out, and I took him up on the offer before I asked what time. And I am not a morning person, and neither is him. So I give him credit for this. So he tells me, we start at 8:30, and to a lot of people, 8:30 is not early in the morning, but trust me, to me, that's about what time I get up. So I stay up late, but so the impressive things, there is not a most impressive thing. There were a few very impressive things that I noticed from one observation. And the first was him and his environment again, which is, to me, it's always cool to see somebody in an environment that they thrive in and that I think they're really meant to do. So that was cool to see. During their dynamic warm-ups, and I'm not going to go into his whole programming, but during his dynamic warm-ups, they were doing somersaults, which is tumbling, which is something that kids today, they should be doing, and to see his dynamic warm-up stuff being shit that actually kids should be doing was impressive. It's like, okay, this is cool. This is actually being done right. And I've been in a lot of conditioning facilities, strength and conditioning facilities, and I've seen the execution of probably a couple hundred strength coaches with their athletes. And what I saw Monday was, and this isn't because I know Jim and have known him forever, the best execution I've ever seen with a coach with their athletes in all the years that I've ever watched coaches train athletes. So their main lift of the day was the squats, and he's got Juliet, his wife, working with the JV. They're, on one half of the gym. No, their form is not great. She's working on their form, but their form is acceptable. So for being JV and for me to walk in there off the street and to say, what, this technique is acceptable. And if it was really bad, like one kid came up, so his heels were off of the floor. It was immediately corrected, and it didn't happen again. So to see that the JV is being coached in a way to get them ready for when they make it to the next level, to take advantage of, the same type of programming, that was impressive. So that was, where am I at now, 2 or 3? The second or third most impressive thing there. The fact that Juliet is helping him is, another thing that's impressive. It's hard to work, and they work in a business together. So it's hard to work with your spouse in a business, but, here they are doing it, volunteer work, as well as a couple, which is, a testament to their relationship, which that is impressive in itself there. His groups, when they were squatting, out of all the squats that I saw there, no, not one of them would be a 10. And I am what Jim would consider, and I'm using his words, not mine, a technical Nazi, and taking, and, I hate to throw the word out there because people will take it out of the wrong context or take it in the wrong context. But I'm big on technique, man. I'm huge on that because I think that's everything. Were any of their guys a 10? No. But were they over a 7? Every single one. Every single one.
And that never happens.
And that never happens. I mean, it's like 2s and 3s, and maybe I might see 1 7. Every single one. So I complimented him on that, when they went into the accessory training. And he said, Dave, when you're only doing 3 or 4 things, how is it possible for any of them to really be bad? So he restricts the exercises, so they're doing them more frequently. And you have to know Jim's training to be able to understand, the philosophy on that, because it's all sub-maximal training. So he can have, the same exercise over and over and over again. And they don't have to go heavy. His kids are strong as hell, and they don't have to lift max effort weights. They don't have to train conjugate systems to be able to do that. They're still kids, and so from the technical aspect, I was impressed with that. From the coaching aspect, when he took them through their accessory work, what I saw worked kind of like a circuit, but not really. Again, just the coaching of the video that I posted was 30 seconds, but that same thing went on for 5 sets, and exactly the same type of participation happened. So they started on the minute, ended on the minute, and there was no bullshit, no screwing around. They were all attentive. They were all paying attention. They were all doing their work. When the work was done, then they head out to the field. The kids respect Jim, which is, a testament as well. So there wasn't a biggest thing. It was more or less just walking out of there thinking, he's in his right, and he's in his right element. So why would I expect anything less than what I just saw? That's kind of how I felt from the whole standpoint. And there's a couple racks in there we need to get the fuck out of there because they look like shit. They're not ours. They're terrible. They look like they're about ready to fall apart. So that was like the thorn in my hand that still hurts right now, because I still see them stupid ass things. And I mean, they are bad. So but they just brought in 5 more racks because they did start this whole junior varsity thing going. But that's what it is. I'll try to get over and get more. Jim will be on the podcast here in a few weeks to be able to, and he's not afraid to tell anybody what he's doing, because you're not him. So he can tell you everything that you do, but you still got to implement it, and good luck with that.
That's a good way to put it. This is one from the live chat, and I know you've answered this before, but I figured we'd put that back out there. How would a common power lifter gain access to the Elite FTS gym for a day?
They don't. It's funny because I started a series on Instagram, and they're all numbered. And I got up to 9. And it was like the 10 things that you have to do to be able to come out here and train. And like 10 was going to wrap it up. This is what you need to do. And I've never finished it.
Do you know the first 9 off the top of your head?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, people need to understand that we're not a commercial gym. We have a group of lifters that train out here a few days a week and then on the weekends. And that group is largely dependent upon, people who are team members. So that would be one way. Become a team member of Elite FTS. If you're a team member of Elite FTS, then you pretty much can come out here and train whatever the fuck you want, to a certain degree. Some of them have keys. Sullivan, is one. Come out here whenever he wants. Makes no difference to me. Total trust. A lot of these guys would not be team members if I didn't have total trust in them. Not to say that, over the years we haven't made mistakes with that, but for the most part, we're pretty much dead on from that standpoint. The other thing people need to understand is the ones that are out here I'm kind of doing the programming for, but I'm teaching them how to program themselves so they don't need me. So somebody like a Ted Tolson, which I'm going to try to get on the podcast, so you can hear his side, of the process, because I think it's been over 10 years of working with him. Ted knows more about training than he even knows he knows about training, just because of what's been drilled into his head. But I don't want to have to be out here. If I want to be out here, but if for some reason I'm not here for a week or 2 weeks or whatever it's going to be, they're fine. They know what to do because they have other people that have been taught how to teach them what to do. So there's that aspect. The other aspect is we've been in business for 21 years, which is a long time. I mean, it's a really fucking long time. And if somebody sends me a DM and they're in town and they want to come out and train, and then I look and see that this person has never made one single order with us, the odds of that happening are zero. They can go down the street and train at 3 of my competitors' gyms. That's who they're shopping and that's who they're supporting. So, you do business and business decisions are based upon values. So our company stands for certain values, which we have listed on our website, and education is a big value, man. Given all the education that we do for free is a big value of Elite FTS, which comes at a huge expense. The expense that we put into the education that we put out is damn near equal to the expense of our cost of goods sold. And that doesn't mean much to most people listening to this, but when you're in retail, cost of goods sold is your largest expense by far. And our content rivals that. And our content isn't a product that we're selling and getting a return on, which most people in the industry do put their content out there and try to get a return on it. And it's a high margin return. An ebook is a high margin return. Online training is a high margin return. A lot of these things are high margin returns. I'm in retail. Elite FTS is in retail. It's a very low margin return. So we're giving away our highest margin asset for free to be able to sell low margin, high quality products. So with that in mind, and somebody's telling me they're a huge fan of the site and they've supported the site, they love all the stuff that we put out there, they love to come out and train, but by the way, I've never purchased anything from you because I can get it cheaper someplace else. Basically is telling me that you put zero value in the content that we put out. So why would you want to come pick my brain and learn from me if that holds zero value? It's confusing to me. I don't understand that. And I'm not telling people and forcing people, shop with Elite FTS. That's not the case at all. Shop with whoever you want, support whoever you want. But don't expect, to basically shun and not support, a company and then want them or have them be more than willing to open their doors and say, yeah, go ahead, come in here and train all weekend for free. We don't even charge for the training. Now if you are somebody that's supported us and you've been a good customer of ours for years, we have no problem with you coming out. No problem. Never, I don't think, have we ever turned away, unless it's the Arnold weekend or, something like that where it's a big weekend. The other thing I have issues is a bad word. The other problems it can create is there's some weekends where we have all the racks being used. Like last night was a rare training night. Every monolith was being used, and I think one of the racks is being used. So everything's being used. So if I had 3 or 4 people that are coming in just visiting, to train, and then the people who are showing up and coming out here 4 days a week, training for meets are now having to wait, for their training to even get started because of the visitors that are coming out. Now you can take that however you want to take it, but I got to prioritize the people that are training for the meets that are coming out here 4 days a week and make sure that they don't have to wait, to be able to train. And they understand some weekends, this is going to be a weekend, for example, I think that's going to be busy. Tomorrow I think is going to be super busy. So they understand, so that, we'll adjust their timing a little bit based upon that. The other component is, if I look at it from the standpoint of, am I going to have to be in the gym during a time that I normally wouldn't have to be in the gym? And if that's the case, say we don't train on Monday and I have to come in on Monday so somebody can be out here and train Monday evening, is that person worth the 2 hours or 3 hours that I'm not going to be with my family? And that's a tough answer, man. To me it's an easy answer, but sometimes the trade's worth it, sometimes it's not. So anybody can visit during office hours. I have no problem with that. We're open from 9 to 5. We don't have a store, so you don't need to worry about being sold a goddamn thing. Anybody can come out, check out the gym, walk around, look, do whatever they want to do. There's no problem with that ever. It's the training where, that's a little, let's just say it's a case-by-case basis, and that's where it was hard for me to write number 10, because it is such a case-by-case basis. There could be a weekend where I know that it's going to be really light, that we have people that are out of town, some people are on vacation, and there's not going to be a lot of people here. Then I really don't give a shit who comes in. I'm more than happy to bring them, even if they've never purchased anything. I'm more than happy to bring them in. I'll work with them. I'll help them with their lifts. I love to do that kind of stuff. But when it comes at a cost of a disservice to the people that I am trying to help that are out here, then I got to weigh that a little bit differently. The other factor is, I never know how many people are going to be here, because I don't have rules, so to say. So there could be, I remember a few years ago when John Meadows and I were training, and it was Saturday was our leg day. It was the brutal day. Man, there were some Saturdays it was just me and him. That was it. 2 Saturdays later, there'd be 20 people out here, and then back to 2 people again. When there's situations like that, and we're not in a situation like that right now because we have enough lifters, but Saturday is going to become spotty here pretty soon, or in the fall it will become spotty like that. Then I don't like telling people, hey, yeah, look, we train at X time on Saturday morning, go ahead and come out, because if I know there's only going to be that actually nobody's going to be here, I probably won't come out at that time. I'll come out at a different time. I'll come out at a later time. So that's the long answer to that. I don't know how else to answer. It's just a case-by-case basis. You can always DM. I'll just tell you no if you can't. It's not that big of a deal.
All right. When you got lean but stayed huge, what did your diet consist of, and how were your training blocks set up? In other words, kind of what was the training like back then? I know there was Justin Harris, and then someone else got you lean as well, I think.
I went through 4 diet phases, I believe. The first one was with John Berardi, and that was just normal bodybuilding training. It was that the whole goal of that whole diet phase wasn't so much about getting lean. It was just trying to get blood work back on point and at that point in time, it was pretty much immediately after I made the decision that I was never going to compete again. And the honest answer is every time I tried to eat clean food, I threw up. So I was convinced I was allergic to clean food. So there's an article on T Nation that goes into that. John explains a little bit what was going on and how he went about fixing that. So through that training process, I never really got that lean, but we did correct a lot of the issues that were going on. And then I met Justin, and that was, maybe it was Shelby before Justin. No, I think it was Justin. Then we brought Justin on as a sponsor, and I was always intrigued with how a national level bodybuilder would turn pro, and then within the first 2 years of being pro would put on 30 pounds of lean body mass. To me, it was just I didn't get it. It was a what the fuck is going on type of thing. And that was, I mean, to relate that to powerlifting, that would be like finally getting to a level to where you can qualify for the pro meets or the money meets or, you know, the bigger meets. And then as soon as you get to that level, you put 25% on your total. It's like, what the fuck? Like, how is that even possible? Because it can't be a drug thing, because they're already taking everything in the world that they need, you know, that they need or are told to take to turn pro, because turning pro is a big fucking deal. You know, it may be a bigger deal in the bodybuilder's career than the actual pro shows at that time in their career. So they're probably willing to take bigger risks when they're right at that edge of turning pro compared to once they get there. But this seemed to happen a lot, and I just couldn't figure it out. And I wasn't that close to the sport to kind of know. And Justin's reply was, well, it'd be easier if I just show you. So, of course, me being me, like, fuck yeah, I'll do this. And so I did. And it's not a lifestyle that I want to live. You know, there's no doubt about that. You know, were chemicals involved? Yeah, definitely. Were they more than what I expected? Not really. Were they anything that if I was to lay it all out, people would say, oh my God, I can't believe that? Probably not. Am I going to lay it out? No. The reasons for that are, you can go look at a past video that I made on PEDs and why I don't like to talk about them, and that will answer everything from there. So from that standpoint, I'm just going to basically say there was nothing really surprising with that at all. It was the fucking carb, for me, at least with Justin, for me, it was the carb cycling and the amount of fucking food that I had to eat. And once I got, I mean, it's a process. So it's not like you're just going to go do this. You know, there's a process to where I had to get down to a certain percentage of body fat, and then high carb days would come in. And then I think he said something like, I wanted a cheat meal like after the first week or some shit. And I forget how he said it, but it was something about, you know, you have so much glycogen in your body right now, you're not going to need a cheat meal for a month and a half or some bullshit. So it was funny at the time, but at the same time, it was like, ah, shit, this is going to suck. And, but the leaner I got, you know, the bigger I got, and the more high days came in, low days sucked, you know. So anybody that's done carb cycling knows what I'm talking about. The low days are just fucking awful. If they were all low days, I think you would get used to it. But when it's carb cycling, it's like, hey, yeah, cool, I have a high day. Everything feels good except you're shitting every 2 hours. And then your metabolism, at least it feels like it's on an inferno because you're hot all the fucking time. And then the next day's a low day. So it's like you just spun up this car and you just threw it on a track and put it out there with no gas, and then the next day you run out of gas, and it's just terrible. And but like I said, it's a process, and I think we've got videos where Justin and I have spoken pretty. I don't think we left anything on the table. I think there's videos with Justin and I where we did a table talk series, and I'm going to try to get them out for a podcast table talk here sometime before the end of the summer, hopefully. And we won't be talking about that, but other stuff. And so it was that, and it was the training during that time period. So the carb cycling is what made the biggest difference. What was frustrating though was I would look in the mirror on one day and look like I never lifted a weight in my life, and that would be after 2 low days. And then after a super high day, I looked like I gained 35 pounds of all lean body mass, and it was fucked up. It's obviously the pictures that you've seen and that have been posted were only the ones from the super high days, taken from the best possible angles, because I didn't put any terrible pictures out there at all. And so it was a bitch, but it was a challenge that I needed at the time, because I needed something mentally challenging that was kind of like training for a meet, and that kind of filled that void that I was experiencing. Because it's not being a competitive lifter, after that came an identity crisis, so to say. So it kind of filled that gap. Looking back, not in the best way, but it filled the gap. So I had the motivation to train. Now, the way I trained during that time period was more DC style training. Justin had his interpretations, of that. And then I put my swing on a couple of the things as well, because I do have restricted range of motion. I still had both my hips at the time. And so it was very, very high intensity training, but it was not 7-day-a-week training. It wasn't twice a day training. It was very, very high intensity training with a lot of cardio. The difference between, and I think for me, that allowed me to keep a lot more muscle than when I dieted and trained with Shelby. I got leaner. I definitely got more. I got leaner, but I wasn't as full, as far as the glycogen standpoint. But it doesn't fucking matter, because I'm not competing. So even with Meadows, every time I did this with all these guys, Justin, Shelby, and John, and a lot of it was just to kind of learn the process, from different perspectives. Like in strength and conditioning, I wanted to learn block methodology. I already knew the Western method of periodization and then conjugate. So I wanted to know different methodologies of the training and the dieting to be able to kind of understand bodybuilding better. And I have far greater respect for the competitors because of all that. And, Shelby's was a little bit different. So it was a little bit of a leaner look with a lot more cardio. Training was left to me, so I kind of kept it the same, more high intensity. 4 days, 5 days a week training. 4 days a week training seems to work best for me. And then with John, and Shelby, there's a lot of cardio, so even more cardio than Justin. Insane amounts of cardio. And with John, there was no cardio, but the volume of the training was through the roof. So there's really no need for the cardio. So it was different through all those. The takeaway is it's harder than you think. The other takeaway is if you're going to diet to an extreme, I guess is what you would call it. And I wouldn't even say I was to an extreme. But if you're going to diet, under 10%, 8% body fat with calipers, if you're gonna go down in there, you're gonna rebound, and to kind of get an idea what that rebound is. And that the hardest part of all of it, if you're somebody that's just looking to be leaner and always be lean, or, you know, to look better, is to maintain the look, you know, once you get down there, because it's a lot of work. It's, if I wanted to try to get that lean again now, it would take 6 months if I tried any of the processes that I used before, unless I tried how JM said that he dieted, then I could take it all off in a month. But it would be 5 months. And then by that time, you know, you're so sick of dieting that you rebound out. You don't want anything to do with it. So from a long-term perspective, what I learned was I really don't give a fuck what I look like. You know, if I care what I lift more than what I look like, and I've always kind of been that way. So dieting and training for how I look is not a really good motivator for me, because at this point I would just rather stay home. You know, to train to try to set some type of stupid strength goal that I set for myself, that's got more empowering motivation to be able to get me into the gym and to train hard than what the other does. So instead of worrying about, you know, if I have a vein in my bicep or what my abs look like or all this other shit, that did motivate me while I was dieting, because you kind of get sucked into this little fucking void, you know, in this lifestyle. You get sucked into it. I use my blood work is my main indicators for my own training moving forward. And, you know, with the help of Dr. Eric Serrano, we're able to look at the blood work and say, okay, we've made a lot of progress, but let's work on these things here. And my blood work, by no stretch of the imagination, is horrible or even bad. You know, it's probably the best that it's ever been. So, and it's probably better than almost everybody that's watching this. So let's just put it that way. But there's always room for improvement, and that's fun. You know, right now that's the motivator for me is, you know, what can we do to try to, you know, pull this up? You know, stupid shit like that. I need dumb goals like that. These are healthier goals, but I need dumb goals like that to be able to push me forward and keep me motivated. Did I answer the question, by the way?
Yeah, I'd say so.
All right.
So next thing we're going to do is, you've mentioned that you don't really read YouTube comments.
Nope.
Or check those out. So we're going to do something a little bit different here and pull some interesting or funny or stupid ones and get your reaction here. So,
all right, let me clarify that. I don't read my YouTube comments ever. So I've never looked at a single one. And I think on the archive site, I think all the comments were turned off. Because,
yeah, that's correct.
Because Jim and I just didn't want to deal with it. It's like, fuck it, who cares? This is basically just a way for us to post videos on our site and not have to incur the bandwidth cost that's going to be associated with the server fees, that this is going to occur with that. With my Instagram, I will look at the comments as long as, because my news feed is basically just made up of Team Elite FTS members, which I do kind of follow what they're saying and what they do. But for my own comments, I might only read about 5 deep, 6 deep. But if I have to scroll, then I kind of stop and I don't even read those. So I will sometimes comment on those, but I really don't have the time to read the comments if it's on Instagram, because I'm answering DMs. So the way that I see that is, if somebody's taking the time to send me a DM, then I'm going to take the time to give them an answer. And I get a lot of DMs. So that ends up taking a lot of hours throughout the week. And for me to not answer those people because I'm addressing some idiot's comment that may be on some post that I made or some post that I don't even look at posts that I'm tagged on, which is probably a bad thing, but I don't even look, so there could be whole threads just tear me apart all over the place, and I have no fucking idea about it. But I don't read them because as long as I have these people asking me questions, I feel it's a disservice for me to go spend time dealing with assholes than it would be helping somebody that's actually reaching out and asking for help. Because from what I understand, most people don't even answer their DMs, which I don't really understand. But that's the kind of answer, the reason why, because I'm only stating this because I've been told by people who are social media marketers that I should be answering my comments and my DMs, and that it would help our social media tremendously. And that may be the case, but I think that it actually helps people more so to build a relationship and actually help them directly. So with that in mind.
All right, so here's the first one here. We'll throw this on screen. So I don't know if you remember the bench press warm-up video we did with Joe Sullivan, November of 2018. Are you seeing that on screen, Dave? Is that showing up on your?
Yeah.
This was a little technique that he was going over. So here's one of the funny comments go down. It was, he said, "I like this guy, but people walking around in public places barefoot give me the heebie-jeebies." If you got nothing funny to respond, you can just say pass and we can go to the next.
No. I mean, fucking people go to beaches all the time, right?
That's a good point.
That's the fucking stupidest thing I've ever heard.
That's probably that guy's
It's like you go to a pool. Yeah, you go to a pool or a beach. I mean, people are barefooted.
All right. Go up. Oh, so this was the video you made on LeBron James' squat. Everyone was freaking out saying that he doesn't go low enough. And you recommended that JL article. So one of the comments, there's a few funny ones actually go down. Where is it? Video summary, Dave doesn't care. You're welcome. You can watch something else now. What was the other one? Maybe not as much there, so go to the next one. Oh, so here's a video of Casey Williams coaching the squad at the LTTX we had back in November. And there was a pretty salty comment on there go down. Said Casey Williams has to be one of the most overrated lifters out there. Total fucking douchebag. All he does is regurgitate everything Dave Tate says. Any thoughts on that? You know Casey pretty well.
I mean, people are entitled to their own personal opinion, but this is a public opinion about somebody that they probably don't even fucking personally know. So I think this is more a reflection on the character of the person making the comment being a complete fucking idiot than it is on Casey. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, because I guarantee he doesn't know, Casey at all, or nor does he know, the struggles that he's had to go through. And actually Casey has posted about this. So, in his training log, he's posted about, the colitis and all the other things that he's had to struggle through over the past couple of years. So as far as him being an overrated lifter, is that what they said?
Yeah, and then a douchebag, which I don't know where that's coming from.
I mean, in a situation like this, I like to see the same motherfucker go through the same stuff that Casey's gone through and still fucking even train. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of these guys have, balls of steel behind a keyboard, but I guarantee you he comes and sees Casey at the Arnold or something like that, he's going to ask him for his fucking autograph.
Well, yeah, that's YouTube in a nutshell right there.
Yeah, I mean, he should be looking up to the guy because he, not looking up to the guy, but it should be, respecting the fact that this guy has been through hell, just to be able to continue to keep training and, and made it back and did a meet last year, I do believe, and he's back now, dealing with trying to figure out how to fight this colitis, as well as what other issues he has going on, and running a fucking gym and starting a float center. And I mean, he's got a lot of shit going on all at one time, and he's still getting his training in, you know. So I don't know if he's regurgitating everything that I've said, you know, because I've been saying this shit for 21 years. Yeah, that's a hell of a lot of shit to regurgitate.
It seems like a lot of people disagree. They're saying somebody said, I don't know if this is a joke, but I missed it, but Casey led me to some big PRs after not competing for 5 years. I can still message him even though I'm not paying him, and he helps me out, and none of this is regurgitated from Dave Tate. Shit, he'll message me just to see how life is going, etc. So.
Well, I mean, here's the other thing too, that, you know, to validate the character of Casey is his bench. He was having a hard time with his bench, so he came down and wanted some help on his bench. So Matt Smith and I took him aside and just focused exclusively on trying to figure out what the fuck was going on with his bench. And we filmed this, and this is put up on YouTube, and is probably one of our better training videos as far as a technique instructional video for the bench press. And Casey is the subject. So if you want to talk about somebody that is an overrated lifter, or, you know, egotistical lifter, or whatever you want to say, how many lifters at his caliber, you know, would be okay going on a YouTube channel and being filmed everything that's wrong with their bench press? You know, so I'll leave it at that.
All right. Here's another one from Joe Jordan squatting at the actually he did a full meet at the XPCs this year, and he had to cut, if you remember, he had to cut his squat suit to be able to squat. It was, I don't remember the exact issue with it, but to go down there.
Can we see his squat?
Yeah, go back up. So yeah, go down.
I think we had to cut it because he was too fucking bloated. Go back to the video so I can see I want to see his squat.
I think so. That's the one. Yeah, that was the one that he didn't get. Something was wrong with the suit.
All right, hold on. So it just, yeah, something's fucked up. Okay, all right. So he didn't get that pass, did he?
No. But he got his third attempt after they cut the suit at 965.
Yeah, his suit. He was way too fucking bloated. You can't do that with gear. He put on too much weight.
So somebody commented, Ray Williams just hit a 1080 raw squat. Equipped powerlifting can't die soon enough.
That's their opinion, man. I mean, fucking Joe's been doing this a long time, man. You know, it's, how many years this guy been doing this thing? I mean, he's like 85 fucking years old. You know, it's, am I going to sit here and try to debate the fact that geared powerlifting is going to make this huge comeback? No, I'm not going to make that statement because I don't believe that's true. You know, I don't see that. I don't see it in the trend of the sport. I don't see it in the numbers of participation in the sport. You know, this is not like stuff you can't find online really easy, you know, just by looking at the number of people that are competing in multiply, single ply, and raw. I mean, it's pretty clear, you know, the direction that the sport has gone. Not the sport is going, but the sport has gone. Now the sport, you know, it can pivot fast. You know, 2010, there was no such thing as raw. You know, there was, but it was very hard to find a raw meet, and very few meets were raw, and raw wasn't division to check off on any entry form. And 5 years later, you know, it's the predominant way to compete. Now, you know, almost a decade later, there's pretty much no gear, you know, so the sport pivoted fast. Now, can it pivot back just as fast? Maybe. You know, do I think it will? Probably not. But that doesn't give reason to shit on, you know, the geared lifters, because if you look, most of the guys, girls that are lifting and multiply have been doing it for a while. So it's kind of the way that they compete, man. It's their thing, you know. And the ones that I know, you know, because I'm old as fuck, they can't take the shit off and compete. It's not even an option. I mean, their joints are shot, man. They can't do it, you know. So a lot of times these comments are coming from people that have been in the sport for 3 or 4 years. You know, let's hear what you're saying after 15, you know, or 20 years in the sport. It becomes a little different game. But I don't very often, and I could be wrong because I don't read comments, so I'm making a big statement here. I don't very often see the geared guys trashing on the raw lifters, man. So this has been this way for, you know, since, hell, it used to be single ply. You know, it was the single ply guys bitching about the multiply guys, and, you know, the multiply guys were never bitching about the single ply guys. So it's just, people in this sport just need something to bitch about.
Yeah, I don't get why people can't just let other people lift all they want.
It's powerlifting, man. It's part of the culture of powerlifting. I wish people would just fucking accept that squat depth and how people choose to compete is part of the culture of the sport. It's been that way since day one. It's not going to change. You know, every sport has its stupid drama and stupid shit and Monday morning quarterbacking associated with it. Just let it be what it is. You know, it's how much could he squat if he took all that shit off? I don't know. How much could so-and-so squat if he put all this shit on? You know, I mean, we can sit there and debate and talk about this all day long, and it's all irrelevant because it really doesn't matter, you know.
Yeah, good point. Well, that seems like a good spot to cut it. Thanks for tuning in.
There were no other bitches?
Well, there were. Here, yeah, go ahead and hit the